as good as Tony is, you don't get that type of level of insight from Tony as you get from Jimmy Holder. Good morning, Tony Messenger.
Good morning, McGraw. Good morning, Kelly.
Hi, Tony.
You would both be shocked to find out that I do not come from a family of bodybuilders.
So your dad was not Mr. Canada some years ago?
No.
Yeah, oddly enough, me neither. I do not come from a family. My family came from a body by Budweiser. That's where my family came from. All right, all things Eric Greitens. It seems like, from reading your column yesterday, that Eric Greitens is putting the squeeze on Josh Hawley. What do you think, Tony?
Well, when I was on your show Tuesday, I said something along the lines of that the governor conflicting with Josh Hawley was a gift to Claire McCaskill and the Democrats. I didn't realize until yesterday how big a gift it actually was, because yesterday the governor filed a temporary restraining order against the Attorney General, basically asking the judge to say, that guy can't investigate me because he's conflicted. And the irony is, he's got a point. Josh Hawley has been all over the map with Eric Greitens. He let him get away with claiming executive privilege, even though it doesn't exist in the state of Missouri, so that he didn't actually have to conduct a serious investigation into the governor's use of Confide, the text-destroying app. And then after the Attorney General, Josh Hawley, got destroyed in the court of public opinion over that particular decision, now all of a sudden he's being tough again and he's investigating the governor. Permission continues, and he's calling on impeachment. And it pains me to take Governor Greitens' side, but there is an argument to be made that the Attorney General should not be calling calling for the governor's impeachment while he's investigating the governor. There's a long-standing tradition of attorneys general being the one statewide political office that often avoids political pronouncements about initiative petitions, about a lot of things, because their job is to end up defending the state or prosecuting the state or whatever. And so it's actually an interesting argument. But here's what makes the argument even more interesting is yesterday Circuit Attorney Kim Gardner repeated her argument that the governor's attorneys, Dowd Bennett, are conflicted and should not be allowed to defend him in the criminal case because Dowd Bennett was also involved in defending the governor in the Confide case, and therefore was able to use one case or the other to obtain information that might help them. It's a pretty clear argument that they make in their brief. It's almost the identical argument that the governor's making against Josh Hawley. So everybody, this is the level of argument that we're having right now. Well, you can't have your lawyer, and you can't have your lawyer, and you're conflicted, and you're conflicted. And it's everybody's throwing stuff up against the wall, and the judges are going to have to, sort of figure these things out. And the biggest decision that a judge is going to have to make is coming down later today. Judge Rex Burleson in St. Louis is going to decide whether or not to dismiss the criminal charge against Governor Greitens. He's already ruled against the governor's attorneys on a motion to dismiss again. This time they filed a stronger, more meaningful, angry motion to dismiss, and ultimately Judge Burleson's going to decide on that today. That'll, have quite a bit of an effect on what happens going forward. But the biggest thing that became clear this week is the governor's legal jeopardy is increasing, not decreasing.
Well, because Josh Hawley floated the idea that he has seen evidence of some type of felony with this email scandal and then has forwarded on to Kim Gardner. But she's got till Sunday to do something. So if she's going to file charges, it's got to be in the next 2 days.
I think the next 2 or 3 days are going to be very interesting. Here's the other thing about that Mission Continues investigation. We already know that Kim Gardner was already investigating that anyway. So it's not like Josh Hawley gave a news conference and said, I found evidence of a felony and I just now gave it to Kim Gardner. Kim Gardner was already investigating that same stuff. So probably, this is just my reading of the tea leaves, the way prosecutors tend to work, the way politicians tend to work, even though we're talking about politicians in different parties here. I don't think Josh Hawley holds a news conference to say, I have found evidence of a felony and I've passed it on to Kim Gardner, if he's not fairly confident that Kim Gardner is going to file some charges later this week. There have been rumors in the political circles for 3 or 4 weeks now that a charge is coming on Mission Continues. The question for me is less about whether or not a charge is coming, but who the charge is against. I would not be surprised that the Mission Continues investigation is a little bit more like what we're seeing on the federal level with Robert Mueller and the Russian investigation, where somebody else gets charged before Governor Greitens, where somebody else who is the person who actually took the donor list that the governor ended up using in his campaign ultimately gets charged or agrees to a plea, and then pressure continues to build leading up to the governor and or his campaign. That's what I think is possible in the Mission Continues situation, is that something just continues to build.
All right, let me push back with you on this Josh Hawley thing for a moment. He's not going to vote on the impeachment in the House, right?
Correct.
And he's investigating the governor on this Mission Continues email. But he made a comment on the House report on the affair and the allegations that are in that report. So, Josh Hawley, you're saying he can't say, hey, you know what, after reading that report, the man should resign. You really think that disqualifies him from investigating him on a completely separate issue?
No, I don't necessarily believe that it disqualifies him. I believe the governor's office is fair to make the point that is not the kind of action that a prosecutor normally takes. Josh Hawley is disassembling when he says, well, I was only talking about this investigation, not that investigation, so I can separate the two. And what the governor's office is arguing in their motion is, no, you can't separate the two. And in fact, it points to Josh Hawley's own words in different interviews that he gave, basically saying previously, well, I can't comment on that because I might be involved in an investigation. And so I believe Josh Hawley's words are going to be used against him because he's been all over the map on whether or not he can give political pronouncements on the governor or not, whether or not he can investigate the governor or not. He's been on every side of every issue related to this since this controversy began, and that's why I give the governor's attorneys at least some credit in this case, that their argument against Josh Hawley is relatively fair, that Hawley puts himself as a prosecutor in a difficult position when he's making value judgments on the individual that he is investigating. Now, keep in mind, Josh Hawley's not going to charge Governor Greitens with anything. Ultimately, the prosecutor is going to be Kim Gardner.
Right.
And that's why a lot of this is more, political
PR wrangling
than it is actually something related to the court case, because Josh Hawley is going to be, a bit player when it comes to the eventual prosecution of the governor on anything.
Tony, one more thing. Yesterday in your column, I guess it was whatever day it was posted at stltoday.com. You threw up an interesting nugget from a couple of GOPers, whether they were GOP operatives but you sort of alluded to the fact that Eric Greitens is hurting or purposely hurting or hindering Josh Hawley's ability to raise money in his Senate race against Claire McCaskill.
Well, what I made a reference to was a statement in Missouri Scout, which is a political newsletter run by Dave Drebus of St. Louis, that's subscribed to by lobbyists and politicians and stuff. And what he said is that he quoted an anonymous state rep that said that political operatives related to Greitens, connected to Greitens in some capacity, are threatening state reps with funding. It's less about Claire McCaskill and more about state reps and other people that might be targeting Governor Greitens. I suppose it could affect Josh Hawley as well, who, by the way, has not released his first quarter fundraising numbers, which is a pretty strong suggestion that his first quarter fundraising numbers are really, really bad. But that's the allegation that was made in Missouri Scout, that people connected to Governor Greitens were basically saying to other lawmakers, if you vote for impeachment, if you go after the governor, we are going to cut off your donor funding. I don't know whether or not those allegations are accurate. I suspect that even if they were made, they would be awfully hard to follow up on right now when you have one of the major GOP funders in the state, David Humphreys, calling on the governor to be impeached.
As the world turns. Tony Messenger, St. Louis Post-Dispatch columnist, and he is not the descendants of bodybuilders, so that's good to know. Learn something new every day. Tony, have a good week. Thanks.